Welcome to the Vault, where Central Illinois' best kept stories are held.
Hey Blake, welcome to the Vault. It's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Oh, that seems like a deeper conversation that's going to take a while. No, just kidding. So I have been in commercial real estate full-time for about 10 years now. It's the only career I've had out of college. It's one of those where I was going to school for business finance and didn't quite know what I wanted to do with it. Wasn't sure I wanted to do anything with it. Mm-hmm. So as what happens in a lot of our formative years, you're just looking for signs. And it seemed like commercial real estate just kind of fell out of the sky and presented itself when seemingly nothing else would. So I got an internship with Coldwell Banker Commercial, the current company I'm with. It would have been the summer of 2012, and just kind of rolled with it ever since. So that's really the long and short of it.
Awesome. So did you grow up in Springfield?
I did.
Okay,
a
cool.
townie, as we are called.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise.
And you guys are both townie, Rochester, Jacksonville, right?
I grew up, born and raised in Springfield.
Okay, so yeah, you're a townie.
Yeah.
You're a Jacksonville townie now.
I'm working my way up to Jacksonville.
Transplant, yeah.
People in Jacksonville don't know me yet, so
they haven't accepted you yet? Okay.
Yeah. So how is the world of commercial real estate right now? What's going on?
Sure. I can't speak for everybody else, but as far as we're concerned in our office and what we're seeing, it's a lot slower than it was the last 2 years. With Fed interest rate increases, higher building cost materials not coming down. They were already high. We're just not seeing a lot of new builds. We're not seeing the sale transaction volume that we were. So that's kind of led to a lot of leasing transactions, which is great because that obviously keeps me in business and keeps the wheels of commerce moving, as a client of mine likes to say.
There you go.
So why don't you explain what you do in commercial real estate? Because you've thrown out a couple terms, leasing and things like that. So how does that work in your world?
Sure. I would say the lion's share of what I do is landlord and seller rep. So if they have a property that they're trying to sell or that they're trying to lease, they generally hire me to try and market that and find a buyer or a tenant. And that's not to say that I don't represent buyers and tenants, because I do, but just the majority of that is on the property owner side. So when they have a need, that's generally when they reach out to me, and through our Coldwell Banker commercial marketing campaign and branding, I feel like that puts us in a really good position to give the property as much exposure as possible. Mm-hmm. And what I always like to point out is, even though it's a national brand, we do have obviously a local presence. Where I live in Springfield, I'm walking the streets of Springfield, and you just don't often see that. A lot of times it's local. Right. Or you have the national guys who are sitting in an office somewhere in California trying to sell your property. And no disrespect to them, that's just kind of the difference.
Right. Yeah. Do you run into, so John and I are obviously commercial lenders, so we both have that word commercial in our jobs. Do you ever run into people that just completely ignore the fact that you said commercial and they hear realtor, and then they think that you're going to help them list their personal residence that they live in?
Not as much as I used to.
Okay.
A lot of times people hear Coldwell Banker and they just cut me off and start talking about interest rates because they think Coldwell Banker, it's a bank. And
okay. Got it.
Can you quote me on a CD? Or I'm thinking about opening a savings account, or I want to get pre-approved for this house.
Yeah.
I
You're
think
sending them to us.
Yeah. Send those.
Of course I am.
Send those people our way.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because there are plenty of people, and I'm sure you get this too, where I say commercial lender, and they go, okay, so what are your residential mortgage rates right now? And I'm like,
exactly.
Okay, that's not exactly what I do, so let me explain it a little bit further. Yeah. So just curious if you ever run into that.
Yeah, not as much as I used to, but what I always like to tell people if that does come up is that's not really what I do. I would be a poor asset to you, but I know people who I can put you in touch with who would take care of you.
Exactly. What's the coolest property you've ever shown, or you've ever had the opportunity to list, potentially?
The coolest. I guess probably my definition of cool is maybe different from others. I feel like there should be like a crazy, showing story about just an eccentric person that I met or worked with. But I mean, the coolest ones are the ones that get a lot of attention and go quickly, right?
Sure.
I think we've talked about this a couple of times, and it's more of a recent success. The Applebee's property on Veterans Parkway.
Yeah.
When I knew that was going to come available, you kind of just know based on location and market intel if something's going to go pretty quickly,
Yep.
and that was pretty hot.
Right.
It's kind of amazing too because the guy who bought it, Applebee's didn't renew their lease, so he was going to have a vacant restaurant. Wanted to list it for lease, try and recoup some of that money that he'd invested, because he bought it with the idea that Applebee's was going to be his tenant for a long time.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a inflated market cap price.
Right.
But we found out almost instantly that there weren't people who wanted to rent a 5,500 square foot family style restaurant. It seems to be a model that's kind of dying.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of people that loved the location and were kind of willing to get in a bidding war to buy it. So that's kind of how we ended up selling it.
There you go.
They ended up tearing that down, right?
They did.
And it's going to be a car wash now?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Nice. We need more car washes.
You say that, and it's a little tongue-in-cheek, and I don't disagree, but for whatever reason, car washes seem to be cash cows.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of private equity money, and
Yep.
if they find a location, they're willing to build on top of you type thing. So it must be a good industry.
They do. Yeah, they do very well in our world too. Obviously, I mean they're pretty easy to finance for the most part, and the tenant or the brand that's going in there, Club, is fantastic. I mean they do a great job.
Any club car wash?
Yeah. Yep. So we had, when I lived in Indiana, we had those all over, and that, I mean, they run them 365. And even in the winter, people are still using those. They're designed that way. So
which is kind of funny because I think like a lot of like bars and restaurants and things, it started out as a cash business, and I bet it was hard to finance. But with debit cards and things like that, and having the wash memberships, does that make it easier to look?
Yeah,
at
right. Because
financials?
it creates an accounts receivable essentially for that business. It's month to month. Obviously, people can cancel it, but when you look at we can guarantee you that next month we're going to make this much, right? So it helps us. It gives us a little bit longer runway, and you can look into what the average tenure of their customer is for those memberships too, and kind of project it out. So, it makes our job a lot easier. Subscription model is a good thing for a lot of industries, and car washes is certainly one of them.
Sure.
So, what sort of properties are you seeing now that is there anything that's more prevalent than others that are coming up?
Yeah, I think so. With Springfield kind of being what I would call a tertiary market, some of the things that you read about in the national magazines that are happening in the metro markets don't necessarily trickle down to Springfield. Like I would have told you 2 years ago, the hottest commodity was recreational land. In 2022, I would have told you industrial was the leading sector that was seeing the most demand and activity. This year, I honestly couldn't tell you what it is. It's just kind of been all over the board. Springfield being a government town, particularly the state capital, they've really mirrored the image of what they wanted to be over office buildings, right? And as we've seen with local and state government, the need for those big office buildings is not what it used to be, particularly in our downtown. But earlier in the year, for whatever reason, small office space, wherever it was, and when I say small, I mean 5,000 square feet or less, seems like it was having this renaissance. Like it was a really hot commodity. People were shifting to that. And I think it's for a number of reasons, chief among them being we are starting to see the aftermath of COVID, where you have these companies that had larger footprints, didn't need it because workers were either fully remote or there was a hybrid thing, so they were going to that smaller space.
Right.
But overall, I think what is doing the most or doing the best is the retail industry. I mean, anything that you see that goes up in these retail centers or something that's online proof, as I like to say, that seems to be doing really well.
Okay. Interesting. Where have you seen? What are you seeing downtown in Springfield? Are you seeing some listings come up there? Are you seeing folks moving down there more at all?
I'd say we're kind of in a little bit of a transition period. I think there is some inventory, there is some vacancy. That hasn't changed, but it seems like it's a little slow moving, I'll put it that way.
Sure.
And I think interest is there, but just being able to pull the trigger isn't quite there. Like I represent a couple of properties downtown that for established businesses, it's gone really well.
Okay.
For not-for-profits that are really trying to gain momentum, hire staff, and get going, that's going okay too. I would say more on the storefront, food service retail level, that's kind of where the transition of the stall's been. And a lot of that stuff, startup businesses, maybe they've gone through the co-starters program at UIS, or they're just getting established. They've got a business plan, but they don't have capital, so they're applying for these grants. That's kind of what I'm seeing. Okay. So I think the interest is there.
Yeah. Downtown has kind of changed to like a small business area. I used to have these
Right.
big brands that were down there, even like Hardee's and Walgreens and I don't know, a few other the bigger box type companies, right? And now it's really only local interest going in downtown. So I want to start my own restaurant or I
Right.
want a boutique or whatever, which is cool. I mean, that makes it for a unique experience, right? It's
Keeps it ever changing.
the whole area becomes a destination instead of just I need to run into Walgreens or I need to go do whatever I'm going to do there, like a big department store. So it's pretty interesting to see how our downtown has changed over the years. Hopefully some of those programs that are coming together where people are banding together to build up areas like Adams Street and that hopefully that
Right.
really,
Yeah, the Adams family, everything that they're doing seems like it's going pretty well. And then with the Innovation Center, from UIS opening up down there at some point in the next few years, I think that'll be a game changer. I just feel like I spend a lot more time down there now and when I was a kid, there weren't a ton of reasons to go down there that at least that I knew of. Growing up on like the far southeast side. So with the farmers market and things, I just feel like I spend a lot more time down there. So I'm thinking about it more. Even I was down there today to pick up our new logo from Star Graphics, who did a fantastic job. And it's just that was one of those companies that they've been downtown for a long time. And to just talking to them, and they feel like it may be turning a corner. So hopefully that's the case.
That's good.
So yeah,
Hearing a testimonial from someone who's made the investment downtown,
right.
and like a lot of the businesses you brought up, it seems like it has to be a conscious effort, and you have to go into it knowing that I'm playing the long game. It's going to take a while to maybe get this going, but I think BuzzBomb and some of the other businesses you referenced are great examples of endurance, if you will.
Right, absolutely.
And really getting involved in the community, getting on various boards, getting involved in various committees, like really getting yourself out there. I don't know that it's any different, but it seems like with downtown, you have to do it a little bit more, which is great.
Yeah, that's an awareness thing, and getting people. There's less people working down there, so getting people to go downtown for a reason. If you live out west and you work out west now, because a lot of these agencies or big office buildings have moved out west. You may never go downtown or go to the other side of Springfield, so it's knowing what's available to you, right? That's what those agencies have to do. They have to constantly promote what's going on downtown, what concerts are going on or car show or whatever, and they're doing a good job of it. I think that Springfield's trying its best, and we just got to support it,
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of interesting how the various businesses in the various sectors, what metrics they look at that factors into their decision to go somewhere. Like we can talk about, and sorry, I'm kind of hijacking this. With retail, it's usually about access to rooftops. How close are my shoppers? What are their income levels? What's the traffic count of this road? Are there a lot of people driving by who's going to see it and are going to make that turn? Yeah. And it seems like with office, it usually comes more down to, well, who are we and what is our clientele? Are they people who don't have cars, so they need to take public transportation? Okay, we know that we need to be close to a bus stop. So anyway, just
no, it's good that people are thinking about those things. Yeah. And I mean, you probably represent a good mix of out of state buyers or out of town buyers and folks that are pretty local. So do you see their appetite being vastly different, where they're leaning, someone from out of town might be leaning on you more to tell them which areas are maybe up and coming, or how much are they using you as kind of like a local expert when they're moving into town?
Yeah, I think you used really good words there. I would say the out-of-town investors really try to rely on the local market experts for intel on, what are kind of the trends and what kind of tenants should we be targeting. I've also found that the out-of-market folks tend to be a little bit more impatient, maybe for obvious reasons. They're far away. They don't have eyes on it. They can't see how it's going from day to day. But the people who are in the market, generally they've been here long enough. They kind of know what it takes, know where it goes, and they're generally pretty, I would say, patient and flexible. Not that the out-of-state guys are inflexible, but you can just imagine out of sight, out of mind. Yeah. Gets a little hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like any time that I've represented a client of mine who's buying a property in central Illinois from, out of state, West Coast, East Coast, doesn't matter, they seem to ask me a ton of questions all the time. We go through the normal stuff, right? We're working through the loan process with them, but the amount of questions I get about, what's this tenant like next door like? What's this building across the street? How do you consider this a nice area or not? And it's just interesting because you would think that there's no real way to learn that stuff unless you're asking the people that live there and work there and have been there for a long time.
For sure.
You can study traffic counts, you can get on Google Maps and go crazy on there, but unless you start having those conversations with people, it's hard to know for sure if you're making the right investment or not.
Yeah.
So.
And kind of to that, I think the question that I get a lot in those same situations is this a high crime area? Is it this?
Right.
And you got to be really careful to
Yeah,
not come off as discriminatory or in our world, violating a fair housing law. So what I try to do is point people towards resources where they might be able to find that information rather than to, convey that I'm an expert or that what I'm telling them is accurate information. But I think it also stems from you can't buy yourself out of a bad neighborhood, right? Mm-hmm. So, you can look at the building and it can cash flow or it can check all these boxes. But if the area around it is not growing or if it's in declining value, that's only going to affect your property, right?
Right.
You guys probably see that all the time too.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Ton of that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting though. Local people, there's nobody harder on Springfield than people that live in Springfield.
We're our own worst critic.
Yeah. We love to tell people that that's never going to work over there, or this. You know what I mean? Why are they coming here? And honestly, you really never know until the support starts going crazy. Some of these places you see get torn down, and then a new fast food place goes up. Well, look at like Chick-fil-A. It's like everybody knew Chick-fil-A was going to do well, but it's the traffic jams and everything that it creates is like, would it have done better somewhere where the traffic could have been directed a little bit easier, or what I mean? Possibly. I think it would have done better anywhere, or I'm not better, but it would have done well anywhere. You know what I mean? So there's going to be brands like that where it's like you could pretty much stick it anywhere and it's going to do really well. But it's interesting to see when things get developed, what people are, because we hear people talking a lot.
Right.
We're constantly asking people, "Ooh, what's going in over there? What do you think about this?" Or how's this
Blake's
going to
my
work?
guy for that. That's why I asked.
That's true. Yeah. They're building that new car dealership over there on Stanford. Yeah, it's like there's no car dealerships over there. Usually a lot of the car dealerships stick together. It was like.
They like synergy for sure.
Back in the day, it was like Dirksen and Stevenson, and then moved out west, and then now it's still primarily far west. Then you got this mega. I don't even know what's the brand that's going in there.
Hyundai.
Is it Hyundai?
Okay, I know it's a green store, and I know they're going to sell electric vehicles.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's a beautiful building. They've done a good job.
It's just interesting seeing where people choose to build, and so what is the next area? Everything was getting pushed west for so long, and we got those new apartment buildings out there, which are much needed, right? Because we had a backlog of really dated multifamily units, so it's nice to have some fresh ones on the market to kind of keep pushing that forward. But is everything still pushing west? Where do you see some build out potential?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what it comes down to, and you use the word need, is where do you see the need? And I think there's still a push for westward expansion, absolutely. But I mean, using the West Wabash corridor all the way down to Archer Elevator / further west into the highway, you're going to run out of real estate at some point.
We're almost in Curran now.
Right, we're almost in Curran, exactly. Not that that's a bad thing, but we're getting pretty far out there. So I think over time you'll see some stuff out there. I think over time, assuming that this Shields Sports Complex goes well, that area, that MacArthur corridor from Shields all the way to, I think it's Stanford, 5-10 years from now, who knows, that may all be developed and it's no longer farm ground. So I see those as, ripe for opportunities.
There's a good chunk of land in between MacArthur and Wabash and the Shields Complex, too.
Yep.
There's quite a bit of land on both sides that could really take quite a bit of retail or development right in that area, too. So that would be interesting. But, there's plenty of opportunity out there if that goes through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a build it, they will come attitude. Once they know that that's happening or close to happening, I think you'll see a lot of people try and flock over there.
Yeah. Do you represent clients in the multifamily housing space as well? I know you do a lot with commercial, but do you also represent folks in that area?
Not as much as I'd like, personally.
Okay.
I mean, I've done a couple,
Okay.
and I've certainly fostered relationships with people who are in that arena. But it definitely seems to be very different from commercial. And if anything, it seems like it's almost, from my standpoint, a secret society. Like the good stuff is happening before it ever sees the light of day. It never comes to market. So maybe they're talking to you guys and skipping me, but I just feel like I'm always missing out on them.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of those transactions need some funding, right? So we end up seeing them, or a bank ends up seeing them, right? So I mean, but you're right. There's a lot of exchanging between investors. The
investors know other investors, and sometimes there's 1031 money, and it's like, hey, would you ever think about selling that property? I need to put some money somewhere. Or there are a lot of backroom deals that get put together, it seems like, and I think in those situations, those aren't necessarily getting bid out for real estate agents or even banks, really. Usually it's I have a handful of banks that I already work with, or I have a lawyer, somebody that takes care of my contract, and we get the transition done. You're like, oh, somebody bought that. I wish I would have had a chance to take a look at that.
Right?
Yeah, there's a ton of that, and it's clearly a very tight knit community, which is probably a good thing in the long run. I think that the 1031 exchanges help at least. People are getting into properties newer and trying to upgrade them. So I think the one nice thing that's happened for sure with that being a tight-knit community is a lot of the multifamily units are getting constantly renovated. So at least the quality of our inventory is increasing from what I've seen. So.
And in that industry, and I didn't mean to jump on the end of your sentence, but in that industry, it doesn't seem like traders are very rate sensitive. Like they're still going to do the deals if it makes sense. Mm-hmm. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, as long as you can raise the leases.
Raise the rents.
That's if everybody's we're in a weird environment right now because there's still some good properties to be bought.
Right.
But if people are in a year lease still and they're in last year's or they're in an older price, which makes perfect sense for the current owner because they paid less, their interest rates are less, so they can have more cash flow to cover that. The new people coming in, I can't up the rent. There's no vacancies, which that might be a great thing. When you look at the property, no vacancies. That's great. Except for if you're held hostage by those old lease agreements that aren't coming up right away, and you can't raise those rents, but your property value's gone way up, your interest rate's gone way up. It's like, can you make this deal cash flow all of a sudden? So a little bit of a challenge right now. I think that we're transitioning through, and I don't think interest rates are done yet either. But
unfortunately not.
Yeah.
I mean, we're having a lot of tough conversations with investors that especially people that are just really aggressive wanting to buy because like John said, I mean, the down payments that some folks need for the deal to make sense are just not feasible for somebody entering the market. So if you're starting to talk about 30-40% down on a multifamily property and it's your first one, it's like it's tough. That's a tough ask. So I probably have a handful of clients right now that are looking to make their first purchase to get into the game, but they had saved up 15-20% for a duplex or a fourplex, something like that, and it's when you start running the numbers with the rates where they're at right now, it doesn't make sense. So you just got to have some tough conversations and just tell them to go back to the well, be patient. Sometimes the right property might just kind of show up.
Yeah.
But I know, there's plenty of buyers out there still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
And when you're having those conversations with those buyers who maybe don't quite qualify, but you say maybe work on these and come back to us, at any point are they talking to other people that they can partner with such that the capital is there and they can make the deal work? Or I guess I'm just curious because it sounds like maybe you're talking to
that does seem to happen. It's certainly being explored more now because of the fact that they need more capital. So you definitely, and that's a great question. And now that you say that, I have had those conversations a lot in the last probably month where somebody goes, well, I don't have the capital myself, and neither does my buddy or my cousin or whatever their relationship is. So could we make an LLC together and go in on a property. It's like, yeah, absolutely, you could do that.
Yeah.
And maybe that is the best solution. And I bet you're onto something there. You'll probably start to see more of those partnerships, or a group of investors kind of coming together to make that work. Actually, I'm representing one right now. It's two people who try to do it on their own, who ended up kind of pooling their money together. So I think that will be a trend that continues. Not that that's not common already, right? I mean, there are plenty of real estate investment groups out there buying up properties, but I think a lot of those people, if you were to talk to somebody who's been investing in real estate in Springfield or Central Illinois in general for the last 5-6 years, I bet their first property they bought on their own, because it was easier to get in.
Yeah, the threshold's definitely higher to get into
for sure.
Real estate investing.
And probably that's why it's so different from commercial, because commercial tends to be more expensive. So a lot of people start out with a group or partners, and then over time, for whatever reason, that group atrophies and it ends up being one or two guys or one or two people. So I feel like I'm dealing with a lot of those people where that's where they started, and they ended up saying, this is my baby now, or I'm the majority owner or whatever.
I mean, a lot of the people that I've worked with in the past and continue to work with have the goal to work with people like you to find a nice commercial property. That's where their goal is to get there someday. They feel like they're going to graduate to multi-tenant commercial properties from the multifamily residential stuff. So I think and I mean, if you look at the numbers, it does make sense for people to have that goal. But yeah, they've got to get there first. A lot of them aren't going out and buying a commercial property for their very first real estate investment.
Right. And I mean, I think that's probably hard for us younger people who are emerging and still kind of trying to establish ourselves. We're still chasing deals. We're still trying to make it all work, and it's just not going to happen. Yep. And I think I'm certainly guilty of this, but I think something that I did early on was I would spend a lot of times on things that I knew probably didn't have the legs, but I was just so, I don't want to say desperate, but I was so eager to make it happen that, you do that, and then you learn some things, but also you may say some things that comes off as you're giving bad advice, or maybe you're throwing things out there that aren't totally true. So that's, and part of that being is bad news. Like we always try to deliver bad news by sugarcoating it or cushioning the blow somehow.
Right.
And I think that's something that as I've gotten older and into this business, I'm getting better about, is just delivering the message, giving it to them straight. It might not sound great, you might not want to hear it, but in the long run, generally I think people appreciate it.
Yes.
And it's not like you're burning a bridge, as long as you're being honest, right?
Absolutely. I've had the exact same experience. And sometimes having and you probably have this too, but like having mentors either in your office or in your industry or even outside your industry that can help you kind of navigate those waters. Like in my world, in commercial lending, I think I became a commercial lender, about 25, 26 years old. And that's how I was with basically every deal. Like it was like, I love every single deal that I got, and I wanted to get it to the finish line. And, having those battle-hardened vets in the office that would come in and say, this is a bad deal, Nick. And for one reason or another. Yeah, I mean, like, so, I am...
If you got any advice from me? Don't do it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's what you want to hear.
I got that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been trained very well in how to conduct analysis on a commercial loan, right? To know if the cash flow is going to make sense for the borrower. All of those things I feel very confident about. But to be honest, I go back to the well on stories I've been told almost as much, if not more, on, this property looks a lot like one, or this deal looks a lot like one that I got this advice on, 2 years ago. Let me keep that in the back of my mind as I work my way through it. I almost go back to those stories more than I do the analysis, because sometimes you can uncover something that's really good or really bad before you even start running numbers on things. So I don't know if you've had people like that in your past, or that you've worked with that have kind of gotten you from what you just described when you were super eager to where you're at now. But yeah, it was huge for me.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have mentors or people who've shown me what to do or what not to do. So yeah, absolutely. And I would say I lean on them even more now. Even though you kind of get in a groove and you get established or anything, there's always still more that you can learn. And so I just, for whatever reason, I feel like with that I've been more comfortable in reaching out to mentors or people who I think might have good advice or have been in a similar situation.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's about building relationships, right, and maintaining them, and having that network. And you don't have that if there's not constant, communication, whether it's, just 5 minutes about this thing or other things that may seem kind of pointless because you know it, but just always good to stay in touch.
Yeah, and sometimes it's great to do it when you don't have an agenda, right? I mean, that's
for sure.
That's how you build the relationship, genuinely is when there isn't really necessarily a need on the table. I think if you can get to know people before you actually need their help, it goes a long way. Because then it makes that moment where it's like, hey, I've got a client that needs this right now. You kind of know, there's no feeling each other out, trying to figure out if you're going to get along and work well together, or if, you trust the person or not. All that stuff can kind of, we already handled all that, right? So now we can march forward. It helps a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Earlier you mentioned the hot thing right now is the car washes. Are there any industries that you see that are kind of falling off? Like, wasn't that long ago that, we had retail movie stores everywhere, like DVDs, rental stores everywhere, right? And then all of a sudden it's like those are all gone now.
Yep.
Right? So car washes are popping up. What's something that you see that's kind of dying off? Have you noticed anything?
Dying off. I thought you were going to ask me what's kind of up and coming. Maybe I can start there and then dovetail into dying off.
There you go.
So car washes definitely seem to be on the rise. I would say that long-term care, medical care, seems to be on the rise too. Okay. For whatever reason, a lot of the office deals.
Private pay?
Private pay, yeah. Or actually, well, sometimes. So a lot of the stuff that I've been seeing in the office world, especially people who are coming to the market, they all seem to be based in Texas. I don't know if Texas is a big healthcare or long-term care market. And I don't know if they're looking at Springfield because Springfield is maybe an older, aging demographic, and we're maybe not the healthiest. I don't know.
Sure.
But
it's the horseshoes, right?
It could be. It could be the horseshoes.
Too much cheese.
Horseshoes are driving people into long-term care facilities.
Horseshoes, and some people like to drive everywhere and not walk. And, that does seem to matter the older I get. Is staying active, and taking the stairs, not the elevator, all that. Yeah. Walking to the grocery store versus driving. Anyway. So companies that take care of that, long-term care, Medicare, Medicaid, that seems to be on the rise. As you've seen, it seems like vape and tobacco is they're still opening shops. Yep. I would have thought like with storage and other things, it would have kind of hit critical mass, and you wouldn't have any more, but those are still going. So kind of on the flip side of stuff that's on the downfall, I think vape and tobacco. And I apologize if I'm offending anyone who I've worked with, but I just don't see that long term staying viable with as many of them as there are. Yeah. I would say that kind of a subset of that is CBD. Sure. CBD got really, really popular really fast, kind of around the time that cannabis was legalized. Maybe it was even before. I can't remember. That I almost never seem to hear about CBD-based things. It seems to have kind of been melded into the vape, tobacco, and all the other stuff. Other things that seem like they're on their way out. We talked about family-style restaurants. I would say restaurants that don't have the fast casual ability to, deliver, drive-through, pickup, carry out. You're in and you're out in 20 minutes. I think a lot of those seem to be gone for whatever reason. Yep. And so we didn't talk about the restaurant sector, but that's the one that I think we're seeing more now than we have since before or around the pandemic started, is really struggling. A lot of restaurants are closing, both the mom and pops and the national chain ones. Right. I don't think we're going to see as many Arby's or Hardee's or whatever as we have, the last 20 years, just as an example. And I think we can, talk about the other things that are affecting the restaurant world, like access to workers and things like that. But I think that's...
I've noticed a lot of turnover in that space too, obviously. I mean, it seems like it's been that way for a while now. But the good news is you get some new, creative, fresh, ideas in the restaurant space. So we've got some pretty exciting ones that seem to be opening over the last couple of years. So hopefully that's something that continues to happen. I think the more established storefront restaurant space, if one of them will close, and if it's been there for a while, it seems like they put a new tenant in there pretty quickly, which is good. So that's a trend that seems to be a positive one, at least. You obviously don't want to see anything close, but if it does, especially if it's in an established restaurant space, you'd like to see another restaurant go in there pretty quickly. So I've seen a lot of that, which is nice.
Yeah. I don't think, and kind of just to wrap up the stuff that's on the decline, I don't know that we've necessarily seen it in Springfield, but I think in smaller markets that, like say a Jacksonville, for example.
Don't be throwing shade now.
I'm not throwing shade. I think they have a Maurice's. I think they had a Cato's, but it seems like...
What's a Cato's?
Cato's is it's a clothing store.
We had that?
I thought so. Maybe I'm making that up.
I don't know.
But Cato's seems to do really well in markets like Jacksonville or Taylorville or some of these that may be part of the Springfield MSA or whatever, but are just a little bit smaller. I see a lot of industries like that kind of on the downward spiral, if you will. They just can't stay open for whatever reason. I don't know if it's they just aren't making it. I don't know if it's the co-tenancy around them isn't driving traffic to them.
Interesting.
Because some of these tenants that go in these shopping centers will try and include language in their lease that says if that anchor tenant, like if that Schnucks or if that Walmart,
Right.
Fails or closes, or their sales are less than 50% of this threshold, then we take a haircut on our rent, or we will pause the rent for a while. And it's kind of amazing when you think about it that my ability to pay you is going to be contingent on somebody else.
Yeah.
But like that's a very real thing.
Right.
So I see kind of some of the dry good clothing stores seem to be on the decline. I brought up Schnucks. I don't know how all these grocery stores that we have are going to be, sustainable over the next 5-10 years, especially as, again, making the trip to go to the grocery store doesn't seem to be as common as it used to be with some of this Instacart and, maybe is that what it is, Instacart, where you pick it out and you show up and they just bring it out to you?
They bring it
to your house.
They bring it to your
Oh,
house.
okay.
Yeah. But you can. I mean, obviously, most of them. I know Walmart's done a great job of it. Is like just that's where you can go drive up and they bring it out to your car. Yeah, Aldi's too. Yeah.
And I don't know if the county markets or the Aldi's or those people have done the same thing, but it just seems like we have a lot of that, and I don't know that we're going to see any more.
Yep.
Certainly. So it makes me think that maybe that's kind of hit its ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Aldi was always like the innovator when it came to grocery stores, because they had like the different checkout process, right? You went in and they would only have like one lane open until there was 40 people in line, and they were like, Bob, we need someone on 5, and then next thing you know, then they're just like throwing the stuff through, and there's not the bagging, and you put the quarter in the cart, right? So it was totally different,
nuts.
right?
Yes.
But the funny thing was, as much as they were innovative in a lot of those things, they're like the last people to put the self-checkout in. We just got the self-checkout in Jacksonville in our Aldi.
Really?
Yeah, and it's like, are they here in Springfield?
I don't know. I haven't been to one in a while. I know that they're I don't know. I feel like they have probably invested a lot of time, money, training into their, because I think it's a pretty involved deal to be one of their checkout people. It's not.
Yeah, their whole employee structure,
right?
The way they shuffle through the different jobs throughout the store, it's pretty unique,
right?
But they wear a lot of hats. But the self-checkout seems like to me that would have been an obvious for Aldi. But that's another dynamic that's changing those grocery stores, right? When I have a cart with like 400 things in it, I want somebody else to check it out. But if I got, I'm just grabbing milk and eggs, I just want to go through the self-checkout and get out of there.
You gotta have options.
And I think there's a time and place for it, but being in the real estate industry, I'm kind of biased, but I like to utilize things that make the real estate relevant and make the people that you staff there relevant.
Yep.
When I exactly, like even if I have a couple items and I'm in a pinch, I'll do self-checkout. But if I don't have anywhere to be and I'm just, filling milk and cookies, I will go through a checkout because I want to keep those jobs in there and stave off automation, at least from that standpoint.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you guys been to the to any of the Amazon Fresh, whatever they're called, where you just
like the
fill up
Amazon
your
grocery
you
store?
just walk out?
Where's one that's close to us?
There isn't.
I thought maybe there was one.
Like it's like in Oregon.
Yeah. No. There are some in Southern California. So, and I have family out there, so I went through one just to test it. I
threw
think
a candy
a
bar in
lot.
your pocket and ran out.
Yeah, no, I didn't do that.
Like, charge me!
Yeah. I think a lot of people from looking around in that place were doing the same thing I was. Like, you saw a lot of people grab one item and then leave. So there's clearly a lot of people just kind of figuring out what the heck that
Jeff
thing
Bezos
is.
knows.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
You're not getting out of here.
Yeah, it's interesting though. I could see the benefit of it. For a lot of people that are super busy. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm pretty old school with those sorts of things.
Yeah, so just to talk a little bit more about Jacksonville, because that's my town, right?
You live in Jacksonville?
Yeah, I do.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
So
You're from there, right?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
But we've had a lot of good development there recently. There's an out-of-town developer that did a really nice job with the Lincoln Square area and has been working on revitalizing that. We got some new stores in there. It's really nice. I mean, they did a great job. And then now our old Shopco finally is starting to, there's a project that's going in there where there's going to be multiple tenants and big names keep getting thrown around that, are kind of exciting. Potential shopping destinations. The women are a buzz. It's like a TJ Maxx or something might go in there. It's like, oh yeah, big time, right?
There you go.
And but then for some reason, Jacksonville is like the coffee shop mecca. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, you guys do have a ton.
Somebody figured out that people in Jacksonville must absolutely love coffee.
You know what I think it is? I think it's that there wasn't a definitive coffee place. Yeah,
well, we have some really good local coffee shops.
Right.
A couple on the square, and a lot of diner type thing. But sometimes diners aren't known for their coffee, unfortunately. But we just started getting. We've gotten 3 name brand coffee places. Well, I'd say Dunkin', and then we got a Perk, and then we got a place called Seven Brew. Mm-hmm. It's a drive-through. It's kind of like some of the other drive-throughs that are coming in.
What's the yellow one?
The yellow one?
Yeah, on your way.
Perk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then now we're getting a Starbucks. It's right next to the bank. We're getting a Starbucks. And it's like, what?
Is that the first Starbucks in Jacksonville?
Well, you made it, actually.
So I bet that had something to do with the fact that you saw a bunch of those other ones, because they probably are targeting markets without a Starbucks, thinking that they might be able to.
They're like, I think they looked at Jacksonville. They're like, oh, these people. There's 19 coffee shops in a 19,000 people population town. You know, I think we need to put a Starbucks.
Starbucks saw all of those other ones and said, "Hold my beer."
We're gonna hold my latte.
Oh yeah, sorry.
So it's just interesting. I always look at markets and I'm like, okay, what do we have? And then it's kind of sad. So recently I was in Ashland, Illinois, and I went there specifically to talk to a farmer, and then I was going to stop. There's a place called, I always mess this up, it's either Jones Boys or Jones Bros Meat. And it's like a little super cool, super old grocery store, right?
Nice.
And they make their own brats there. They're the ones that sell at the farmer's market.
Is that?
They got the apple brat and the Vidalia onion.
Okay.
And they used to, and I think they still do. Anyway, their brats are fantastic. So whenever I'm near there, I always go in and grab some brats. And then I was going to have lunch at the diner across the street. Mm-hmm. Diner's closed. I was like, what is going on here? So then I was driving around town trying to see what there is to eat. It's Casey's Pizza. Casey's, the gas station, which has pizza, right?
It's good pizza.
It is not bad. It's not bad. But, I didn't want to sit at a gas station. I wanted to, be at a little diner or something.
Do they have seating in there for people who get food?
That one there.
Some of them do.
Some of them have a little,
Yeah. Okay. I feel like the ones I've been to, they don't. And I'm like you, I like to sit down, so I end up going out to the car, and just because I don't eat in the car, I'll have
you
the
look
car
like an animal when you're eating.
Eat there. If it drips on the ground, so be it.
Yeah, you're sitting at the gas pump eating pizza. People are like, man, what's wrong with this person?
Right.
What's going on in their lives where they're eating in their car, So, it's just sad to see some things digress like that, or depress, or I don't know what the correct term is, but when the economy is not supporting, there's people that live out there. You would think that there would be room for a restaurant.
Right. Right.
So
yeah, there definitely should be.
Yeah, but I don't know. Springfield is doing well. I'm excited about a lot of the things that are getting built right now, and so hopefully we continue to have some good commercial presence around for us all to do some business with, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is your hope? What is something that you really want to focus on in the near future? Goal or something exciting that you think might be a project that's going to get done that you want to be a part about, or anything like that in the next few years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think just because of the nature of my business, it's kind of go, 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 and a lot of it's you eat what you kill. I get so wrapped up in, just the now of what can I do to help my existing client base, service my existing listing inventory while also creating other opportunities. So that's a great question, and I think one of my mentors would be frowning down upon the fact that I don't have necessarily maybe a 1 or a 5 or a 10-year outlook, but really, I mean, all I can do is keep my eyes open, and when opportunities come around, try and take advantage of them, and if there's a need, service them. So that's kind of the blanket answer, unfortunately, that I have for you.
Is there any specific type of real estate that you don't know a lot about that you would like to get into more? I mean, you mentioned the multifamily a little bit, but is there something that's like, man, I'd like to have that as something that a specialty for me or something like that?
Sure. I would say industrial, warehouse industrial. We don't have enough of that, and the few deals that I've been a part of, I really, really enjoyed. I think it's a very niche and interesting sector, and there's just a lot of stuff that goes into the businesses that use them and how they use them that I find very fascinating. So warehouse industrial, I'd love to do more of and get more involved in. There was a time where I thought getting involved in agriculture or farm ground was maybe the way to go, and the young naive guy who's got dollar signs in his eyes just sees, oh, that's a really great opportunity. There's a lot of 1031 exchanges. It seems to be kind of a profitable thing, but if you're not a farmer, if you don't have a farming background and you don't know things about soil types and cash rents versus crop share, I just feel like kind of like a residential person trying to do commercial or vice versa. You're just if you're not an expert, you shouldn't do it. So that's something that I've thought about getting into, but I just get so wrapped up in the commercial stuff that I don't think so. But if I can venture out into more multifamily, warehouse industrial, I'd be a happy camper.
Yeah, awesome. What are some ways that people can get a hold of you?
I think I make it pretty easy to get a hold of me.
Good.
Generally, on all of the brochures or signage or posts or whatever, there's my cell phone or my email. So I'm not a stranger. I like to make it easy for people to get a hold of me, and I also like to not leave anything, not leave an email unanswered or a phone call not returned. So even if it's something where I know probably the likelihood of success is not there, I try not to discriminate. If someone's trying to get a hold of you and they want to talk to you about something, I feel like I owe it to that person to hear them out and listen to them, because maybe there's an opportunity to help them.
Gotcha. So just Google Blake Pryor, and I know you're on LinkedIn. And
Google is good. Facebook, LinkedIn. Used to have Twitter, but got rid of that.
Smart.
X
now.
X. Oh, that's right.
X.com.
That's right. Since Elon took over.
Right.
But not to get negative, but Twitter just seems like a battleground for just people who are in attack mode and
not a great conductor of business for sure.
Yeah, I mean, in Facebook, I think Facebook you can still get in the weeds and see some real weird stuff. I don't know if LinkedIn quite has that yet.
Yeah,
but depends on what your algorithm's showing you. Right
Okay.
Yeah. Mine was into baby goats for a while. It was like baby goats playing all the time. I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is nice.
I was wondering what those sounds were coming from your office.
And is that from you clicking on something?
I don't know. Apparently, all you have to do is mention something around your phone now, and it just starts coming up on your feed. That's
Thanks a lot. You just gave all three of us baby goat.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's text me later if baby goats start popping up on your feed.
Will do, because I was going to say the same thing. Is you could just be talking about random things like Botox, and the next thing you know, you're getting ads for
Yeah, you're right.
It's crazy.
Whatever. You're right. What about anything exciting you got coming up that you want to tell people about? Anything that you've got, like maybe within your current role, your job, or maybe some of the outside the office stuff that you do? I know you're involved in some different organizations. You got anything coming up you want to shout out?
Sure. I mean, on the professional side, nothing really. Just if you are looking to sell, lease, or buy commercial real estate, call me, of course. As far as organizations I'm involved in, I'm the vice president of Downtown Springfield Inc.
Right.
They have their annual dinner coming up, I believe, in October.
Is that the farm to table one?
That's the annual dinner where they do like the awards. It's usually held.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to that last year.
Yeah, we were talking to you there. Was it at the Wyndham?
Historically, yes, it has been.
Yeah. We were there. Yeah.
Cool.
And I believe it's at the, I think they call it the BOS Center now, but it was the Convention Center.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
They were talking about doing that. I'm not on that committee, but I know that's coming up, and that's
awesome.
that's DSI's probably #1 fundraiser. A great way to support a
Good
really
deal.
good organization that advocates for downtown businesses, like we were talking about. Otherwise, no. I mean, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
Awesome.
That to put on people's radars, but appreciate the time.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for coming on. It was nice talking to you, and hopefully some people will reach out, but yeah, appreciate it, and we'll see you around for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, man.
The Vault, where Central Illinois' best kept stories are held.